First off, welcome everybody to this presentation put on together with the Research Council and the Curriculum Instruction SIG through Shape America. First, I see everyone's putting things in the chat, which is great. Chat conversations. If you have any questions throughout today, please put them in the chat and we'll be monitoring those and sharing those at the end of the presentation. I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Tori Shiver. I am currently the chair of the Curriculum and Instruction SIG. I worked collaboratively with my past chair, Langston Clark, and then I'm currently working with Kelly Simonton as the chair-elect for higher education, and then Dwayne Edwards as our chair-elect practitioner. And that kind of highlights some of the ways that we're moving forward in terms of a SIG. We're trying to be more collaborative and bridging the gaps between research and teaching. We don't have teachers. We don't have curriculum, without teachers to implement it, and research is such a pivotal component to all of that, so we feel they should be paired up. So Dwayne is our inaugural leadership role for a practitioner. He's already doing an awesome job. So the collective group is putting together ideas in terms of practitioner awards, as well as adding a practical speaker to our annual speaker that we typically have as a research perspective or a university perspective. And continuing moving forward and finding ways that we can connect one another with everyone's voice in the room. So that said, that's a little background on the Curriculum Instruction SIG. We are also actively trying to find ways to collaborate with other groups and SIGs across Shape America, hence our collaboration here with the Research Council and with Paul Wright. And Paul, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Shiver. Yes, my name is Paul Wright. I want to welcome everyone. We can already see we have great representation from across the U.S. and lots of international folks joining us, so we're very excited about that. I'm a professor at Northern Illinois University, and also I'm proud to currently chair the Shape America Research Council. The research conducted by Shape America members is an engine that drives best practice in our field. And the Research Council is proud to support this mission by disseminating, supporting, and celebrating the high quality research done by our members. I'm very happy to be co-hosting this event with Dr. Shiver and highlighting ways that our interest in supporting research intersects with the interests of the Curriculum and Instruction SIG. Dr. Shiver and I were so excited when Dr. Ang Chen accepted our invitation to deliver this lecture because we think it is a perfect way to demonstrate the intersection of these two areas. His title today is going to be the Curriculum Research and Practice. What are we teaching and what should we teach? I want to say a little bit about Dr. Ang Chen in a way of introduction. He is a preeminent scholar in our field, and I'm sure everyone who logged in today is well aware of that. That's probably why you're here. He's currently a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. His research focuses on children and adolescents' learning, motivation, and physical activity behavior in K-12 physical education and beyond. His expertise also includes physical literacy, physical skill assessment, program evaluation, and research methods. Dr. Chen has been a principal investigator on several NIH grants, large, multi-site, multi-year physical education curriculum intervention studies that have involved dozens of schools and literally thousands of students. He's been able to conduct this high quality, rigorous research that's rooted in practice, and it has direct implications for what we do in schools. No doubt his experience as a physical education teacher and a coach has informed his ability to work in real world settings and do such relevant research. In addition to his professional accomplishments, I also want to say a little bit about Dr. Chen as a person and his character. Despite all that he has done and achieved, he remains a very unassuming, humble, and genuinely interested, curious scholar. He's always interested in learning from others and expressing an interest in their work. He's a very generous, supportive, and gracious mentor to his graduate students and many of us in the field working as collaborators. For these reasons, he's a role model to Dr. Shiver, myself, and so many others in the field. In this research lecture, Dr. Chen will share his insights about reconceptualizing physical education as an extension of kinesiology and health science, rather than continuing as an extension of sports and athletics. He'll particularly focus on the role of concept-based physical education in this effort, based in his research on PE curriculum design and student learning in concept-based curriculum at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. So with no further ado, it's my honor to introduce Dr. Ang Chen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all very much for attending the event in late afternoon, at least in my hours. It's 4 o'clock here on the East Coast, and some folks on the West Coast or international, probably you're in different time zones. First of all, I'd like to thank Tori and Paul for your invitation and for your hosting this event. I think it's a very, very meaningful event. And at the same time, I like also to thank Research Council and the Curriculum and Instruction Special Interest Group to put things together to make this happen. I think this is a very good start, and I just hope we will have more of those opportunities to talk about the curriculum and the research and the physical education, in a sense that we do want to sustain physical education in the schools for that. So before I start, I'd like to share a little bit of my background, and like Paul says, and the theme of the lecture, of my presentation or the event is to look at the curriculum. So the theme is about a drastic idea that I have had for a number of years, which is to transition physical education from a sport-based program to education experience for our students. A lot of times, and people ask me in conferences, all those type of settings, saying type of sport, what type of sport background I have, and so on and so forth, because I'm holding those type of perceptions about sport as education content. I have to say I grew up as an athlete, as a high-level basketball player. So I grew up in China in their typical sports school, and the children were selected into those sports schools and were trained to be high-level athletes. So I was in that type of environment. So I accomplished a lot as a player and as a coach. So I coached the basketball team in high school, and I brought it up from nothing to state champion in 3 years' time. So I'm an athletic person, but I separate athletics from education experience in my study in terms of curriculum. So when I look at the curriculum current status in my current research, the data and the experience, and I think it's about the time for us to talk about this from different perspectives. So my goal here is not to say here's a definitive curriculum design that everybody should be doing. My purpose here is to start a conversation along this way. Okay, so let me share my screen so we can get started. Is everybody seeing the screen? Thumb up if you see it. Are we seeing the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Over my career, I have witnessed many changes in physical education curriculum, but I have to say at this point that not all changes have addressed a critical issue in physical education, and that is to create a curriculum that is sustainable in the school environment as a subject matter. Therefore, today, I try to do a little bit of reflection and to talk about where the future holds for physical education curriculum reform by proposing a different framework for the future of physical education. I'm given a generous 90 minutes for this event. I will use probably 50 to 60 minutes to reflect on our history, discuss our curriculum crisis, and then I will elaborate on what the future of physical education should teach. And I'll share the research on curriculum development in my own work, and discuss a different curriculum framework. I practiced, so my presentation probably be around 45 to 50 minutes. So let me practice my time management skill at this point. So let's go, let's begin. I'll start with a little bit reflection on the history of physical education. From the very, very beginning, physical education is a unique content with a focus on student physical development and health. So in 19th century. And as many of you know, at that time, the leaders of physical education were prominent physicians, such as Dr. Edward Hitchcock at Amherst College, Dr. Luther Halsey Gulick at the YMCA school in Springfield, Pennsylvania, Dr. Kate Campbell Hurd at the Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, and Dr. Dudley Sargent at Yale and Harvard. During this evolution in the past 100 or more years, physical education first became a growing ground for health development of children. Then it has become an extension of athletics. Over time, the original idea for health development has diminished to the minimum. The content evolution has transformed the curriculum in a profound way, in that it moved from the health focus to physical capacity building through gymnastics. In the early 20th century, Thomas Woods and Cassidy incorporated the sports and the games in the curriculum to accommodate the goals of general education, such as intellectual development and character building. So they started to move away from the stringent gymnastics system to include more games and sport-oriented activities in our curriculum. Now, this new physical education focus has gradually become a mainstream curriculum with a strong connection to interscholastic sports or athletic of schools. The influence has extended to this day. During the same time, research in physical education took off and it became a mainstream research enterprise that includes science of exercise physiology, biomechanics, neuromotor development, motor learning, exercise psychology, sociology, and educational science. In 1964, Franklin Henry wrote a very influential article that suggested physical education must transform from a course of study to a discipline. Many things happened afterwards, but one thing is certain. That article started a split between K-12 physical education and the kinesiology science. The prevalent goal of physical education has remained to develop students' sports skills. Although part of kinesiology science is about performance, the K-12 physical education curriculum in most schools are rarely about the science of performance, but exclusively focus on mastering the skills and actual gameplay for recreation and leisure purposes. And this diagram shows the strong connection of physical education to athletics, which is separated from the kinesiology focus on health, fitness, and physical activity behavior. Since then, from this development, physical education has experienced many challenges and crises. Realizing the source of the crises might stem from the curriculum, from December 5th to 9th in 1991, the NASP, which is Association AFERD before Shape America reorganization, organized a conference called Critical Crossroads, Decisions for Middle and High School Physical Education in Orlando, Florida. so which is 30 years ago. The purpose was to search for new curriculum ideas to revitalize the curriculum in secondary schools. The outcome is very disappointing. After 4 days of meeting, no agreement or consensus about physical education curriculum reform or reconceptualization was reached. Since then, no major attempts have been made for a major curriculum reform at the national level. So from that meeting, there were dozens of articles in the collection published in Joubert in 1992 September issue, so which is a special issue about the conference. So you can go ahead and read those articles, and it's really thought-provoking reading exercise, at least for me. The curriculum crises have continued and deteriorated. Now, physical education, teacher education programs are being cut in major universities across the country. Our researchers cannot find evidence to show physical education can help students achieve our own standards. So you can read Peter Hasty's article, you can read Tom Templing et al.'s article about PEAT programs. And a couple of weeks ago, and we heard that the prominent teacher education program at Ohio State University was cut. So starting from next year, they were not accepting teacher education students in physical education. So that's so sad. Here's a set of alarming quotes from physical education leaders over the 30 years. At the 1991 Crossroads meeting, Siedentop warned physical education continues to limp along as an endangered species. In 2010, Pangrisi pointed out that physical education is disappearing, and it's still disappearing today. In 2019, Templing et al. Asked, will physical education, teacher education survive the 21st century? Very good question. My answer is no, if we do not change the K-12 curriculum. And then what should physical education teach? In my mind, physical education should align with the kinesiology science to reflect the major tenets of kinesiology. There are 4 major reasons for that. Number 1, kinesiology is a mature and well-established science. Number 2, kinesiology is an integrated science from natural to social science, aiming to solve problems in human lives. 3, kinesiology is concerned with enhancing quality of life. And 4, it is valued by many academic and educational communities. Along this way, the ultimate question for curriculum design is, what knowledge is of most worth learning? I broadly define knowledge that includes physical skills and physical competence and physical fitness in our field. The question applies to all subject matter in schools. As the diagram shows, it is clear now that physical education should contribute to helping students learn about healthful living. However, the health focus is not new. In 1860, Herbert Spencer, an English philosopher and educator, wrote an influential book called Education. The subtitle is Intellectual, Moral, and Physical. Does that sound familiar with our cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain? I think so, right? So 1860. In that book, he argued that teaching children about physical health was an inarguable, utmost priority of schooling. Now, he was a philosopher and general educator, and he thought physical education should be the priority in school curriculum. The health focus was the original intent of physical education, as we already know, and the physical education specialists should be the leaders in this field. And the physical education, health for living, is the current expectation from the public as well. So there's no excuse for us not to do it. The curriculum approach for the future, in my mind, is a concept-based approach. In late 1980s, Ang Chen and her doctoral students within that group, Kathy Ennis was one of them, and she was my doctoral advisor at the University of Maryland. And they began to develop a curriculum development framework called Purpose Process Conceptual Framework, known as PPCF. They used the PPCF to question and evaluate 5 prevalent physical education curriculum models worth in terms of what students would learn. Their work signifies an important theoretical transition in curriculum design by suggesting that a physical education needs to take a concept-based, concept-central approach. Students should not only do in physical education, but more importantly, know and think why they do what they are asked to do. A concept-based curriculum should be guided by learning theories. It should have clear, defined, and achievable goals. And it should focus on knowledge acquisition as well as physical competence development. A concept-based physical education can have long-lasting impact on students' physical activity behavior. There are very few studies with this longitudinal perspective, but we do have some evidence. For example, Fitness for Life by Chuck Corbin's group, they studied the impact of that curriculum on high school students. After 20 years of learning the curriculum, and these people are still physically active and still can recall the content and they learned in that curriculum, 20 years. Now, our own data from middle school study showed it is impactful for at least 14 months. So they study our curriculum 14 months after they study it, and they still remember it and they still use it in their physical activity routine. So we devoted our time, which is about 20 years, to study the curriculum reform and try to accumulate evidence. So we try to develop curricula based on evidence we collected. So in the past 30 years, my lab has conducted many large and small research projects, and led by late Kathy Ennis. Most of the projects are curriculum interventions research, in which we develop physical education curriculum and a few tests their efficacy using rigorous research designs. The 3 in the red frame here are a series of concept-based curricula to help students learn kinesiology science for lifelong health for living. One is for elementary school, the other one is for middle school, and the third is for high school. And the high school one is still ongoing. And if you are teaching high school, I'm recruiting, okay? We need a nationwide dissemination of the curriculum. So NIH is interested in dissemination results of the study. And our curriculum development approach is a little bit different from the traditional process. So we take a research-centered 5-stage approach to develop curriculum. First, there must be a guiding curriculum framework to determine the goal that the students should or are most likely to achieve. So if we teach you something that the students cannot achieve, we're just wasting our time. Second, the scope of the content is determined to ensure content relevance to our students. The content then is sequenced into instructional units and the lessons in terms of the organization of the science to be taught. In the meantime, instructional strategies, assessment tools, facility, equipment needs are determined as well. Third, parallel to the second stage, a rigorous research plan is designed. The research is a cyclic process that repeats 2 to 3 times, meaning the curriculum is to be taught several times to ensure the trustworthiness of the evidence. Fourth, after each cycle, the curriculum is revised according to the research evidence that is serving as a diagnostic tool. Lastly, the curriculum will be finalized and ready for dissemination. So it's a very long process. So this is basically a research design. People call it as a logic model. So it repeats itself at least 3 times during the curriculum development process. So you can see the red line here, that's the feedback loop. So every time we have our outcome and we feed information back to the curriculum design, so the curriculum design team will work on the feedback and revise the curriculum. So here is the elementary school curriculum we developed. It includes 3 units. Each unit includes 30 lessons, 10 lessons for 3rd grade, 10 lessons for 4th grade, and 10 lessons for 5th grade. Students in each grade will experience a total of 30 lessons. So the total number of the curriculum, number of lessons of the curriculum is 90 lessons. So this is the middle school curriculum. We call it as Science of Health for Living. So it has 120 lessons, 40 lessons each for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. The 40 lessons for each grade are organized into 2 units, cardio fitness club and healthy lifestyles. And this is the high school curriculum we're developing and we're testing. And it was unfortunate that the COVID just interrupted our study tremendously. So we basically stopped for 1.5 years. We do try remote and all those type of things, but it will skew the research design. So the data basically collected during that time were useless in my mind. So the high school curriculum includes 40 lessons, and we do have partial data to support this. 24 9th grade and 24 grade 10 and above. So the lessons are organized in 2 units that primarily focus on learning the science and the behaviors for caloric balanced living. Throughout those curricula, so 3 altogether, we do have some common curriculum attributes. All the curricula were designed with these common themes in them. All are concept-based. All knowledge learning tasks are integrated with physical activity tasks. All lesson plans are scripted verbatim for teachers to use. Each curriculum is accompanied with a student workbook that each student will have one during physical education that contains assignments for students to complete in each lesson. All lessons are structured with a 5E instructional system, which is very different from the traditional 3-part system, which is warm-up, main content, and closure. Let me say a few words about the 5E system. Each E signifies a particular instructional strategy for achieving the instructional objective. Engagement is to motivate students mentally and physically for the lesson. Experiment is for students to be active so that they can observe their body's responses to the physical activities and collect data to figure this out. Explanation allows students to work with the teacher and the peers to understand the effects of physical activity. Elaboration invites students to do more physical activities by solving physical activity problems. And evaluation provides opportunities for students to reach a conclusion about the lesson. And of course, use our data. Now, because this is a research, and we expect the evidence can truly reflect the power of the curriculum, other than other factors that can impact the learning achievement. So the development of each curriculum is treated as a research project. In each study, we follow the rigorous randomized controlled design to ensure we can provide trustworthy evidence to determine the efficacy of the curriculum. And we use both qualitative and quantitative data, but the entire research design follows the typical experimental protocol. So in some of our publications, you can see we summarize observation and interview data, but the sample size, the sample can be large. So normally around 300 students, we interview 300 students and summarize the data. And we do summarize the codes and develop dummy coding. Eventually, we run a statistical analysis to summarize their responses. So those are the procedures that we follow to develop those trustworthy evidence. So in this process, we would establish a representative sampling pool from which we randomly select a nationally representative sample of schools. We would randomize the schools in experimental or control conditions. The design is multi-level to control for cluster effects to ensure the rigor of data analysis and the findings. So that's basically the research design perspective of this. And in our study, we constantly focus on those variable groups. These are the major variables we believe relevant for the project. In each project, we measure them to inform us about the efficacy of the curriculum. You can see we believe that only student learning achievement is the most viable indicator of the efficacy. By that we mean knowledge gain and physical activity in physical education. So we want to maintain the benefits they receive from physical activity. So that's a achievement as well. So if a curriculum does not teach students knowledge and the skills of the discipline, does not provide opportunities for students to be active, the curriculum can be deemed inefficacious. Some of the findings, I just summarized them here for the time being. I will only report some summarized findings about knowledge, physical activity, and the student workbook impact, because these are the outcomes directly related to the concept-based curricula we're testing. For example, here it shows that elementary school students in our curriculum gained 20% more knowledge than those in the conventional health for living curriculum. By the way, we test those things, and the curriculum's name change in North Carolina is no longer physical education, it's health for living curriculum here. That's the name of our K-12 curriculum in the state. So in the middle school, we see similar knowledge gain, but this diagram, this table shows, figure shows the knowledge does have carryover value to it. So students in the first year, that's sixth grade, gain some knowledge, and then they continue to gain new knowledge at the seventh grade, and then they gain a little more or a little bit less, I guess, knowledge at eighth grade. That's a phenomenon, I call it as a knowledge saturation. So we go along with this, but still at the eighth grade, they gain additional knowledge, but just not as much as they did in sixth and seventh grade. This is a high school partial data. We were able to teach about 11 to 14 lessons in those 20 lesson unit. So we couldn't move forward with that because all schools were shut down. So as far as you can see that we do have knowledge gain in high school students, but the magnitude is not satisfactory. So if you look at the percentage correct score is in the teens, less than 20%. So if we give them 100 questions, they can only answer 15 or so correctly. So it's still low. But we have resumed our experiment in the spring, and now we're still collecting data in schools. So we're expecting a full set of data this year. Physical activity is a major concern in concept-based curriculum because we spend so much time for students to do cognitive work, right? So the in-class physical activity data were collected using accelerometers. So this data show that elementary school students in our curriculum were equally active or inactive, depending on which way you want to go, as those in the control condition. So the MET, that's a metabolic equivalent measure of caloric expenditure for physical activity intensity, is below 3. So it's right below the moderate level. So our attribution is that those experiments, in those elementary schools, physical education was taught once a week in 30 minutes lesson. So there's no enough time. There was not enough time for students to boost their physical intensity in those lessons. This is the data from middle school. So they do have higher level of MET, but this diagram just illustrates the typical flow of physical activity intensity in a 50 minutes middle school lesson between experimental and control conditions. Now the data, this is just one typical diagram, but the data came from about 70 lessons, individual lessons. So it shows intensity levels in our curriculum flow in an identical pattern as that in the control condition. So it is clear that the students in the concept-based physical education receive the same physical activity benefits, at least as much as those in the control condition. The high school data are still being analyzed. It takes a long time to organize the physical activity data. So we're working on it. The workbook is a major concern because students will do assignments in workbook. So they will stop and look at questions, answer them based on the data they collected. So it is quite unusual for students to use workbooks in physical education. The reason was to integrate it in the curriculum is to strengthen the learning of cognitive knowledge. Teachers usually give lectures in the middle of physical activity to emphasize some points of knowledge, but soon after that, the students will forget. So the use of workbook can really reinforce students' learning in that regard. So the data here show that the workbook certainly contributed to their knowledge gain, but the mechanism is a little surprising. The diagram on the left shows the relation between knowledge gain, which is on the y-axis, and assignment completion rate, which is on the x-axis. The scale of the axis is the number of non-attempted answers. So the number, when the number goes large, which means the student didn't do the questions as many as others. When you look at that, whether or not students do the assignments had stronger predictive power for knowledge gain than whether or not they do the assignments correctly. So whether or not they do the assignments right, it really doesn't matter. Whether or not they can do it right on the spot at the end of physical activity, that matters. So another analysis shown on the right identified the impact of specific lessons and their assignments on knowledge gain. So those bold lessons are contributing lessons. So they contribute very much to the knowledge gain. So if we want to make sure that students learn the content in physical education, these lessons must be taught. Physical education teachers often ask us, can we skip a lesson because the semester is cutting short? So we will say, okay, you can skip lesson 5, but not lesson 6. So that's very, very useful in reality. In high school, we look at the workbook contribution to knowledge gain as well as physical activity. There are 2 units on those in this diagram. So the unit 1 is on the left, unit 2 is on the right. So we can see the different assignments will contribute differently to knowledge gain here. So the direct knowledge gain is from reasoning tasks. So for knowledge assignments, we have descriptive tasks, we have relational tasks, we have reasoning tasks. Only reasoning tasks matter to knowledge gain in both units. Same thing here for physical activity. Only reasoning tasks contribute to in-class physical activity, which means to me that once the students understand why they need to be physically active, they will put energy into physical activity for doing it. What these data tell us in terms of curriculum design. So I reflected on these data for many years as well. Well, look at this, and when I'm reading physical literacy text, I said, well, yes, these are all pretty okay ideas, good ideas, but how can we operationalize them in the designing of a curriculum? So the more I reflected, the more I think we need to start from very beginning. And we talk about quality of life quite a bit, but what does it mean? We need to be very clear in the purpose of assigning the curriculum. So here is my understanding of this term. So when I look at the quality of life and I see those 2 things coming out from that concept. One is quality of life for your entire life. That's very, very important. That's our goal for physical education. And on the other hand, we have a quality of living, which is on our daily basis, how we are satisfied with our life today at this moment in physical education. So I think in physical education, we emphasize this quality of life, or using Dr. Corbin's words, transient's term of at the moment, very much. So we call it as developmentally appropriate activities for students to enjoy the activity, but we tend to overlook whether or not this activity they're doing can contribute to the long-term quality of life. Based on this understanding, I think a curriculum framework can be based on those 2 types of understanding of quality of life. So Dr. Corbin in 2016, when he was talking about assessment issues in relation to physical literacy, and he labeled enduring dimension and transient dimension here. I think these are the foundations for curriculum design as well. So when you look at those type of things, so we need to give students content that can be enjoyable at the moment, can be meaningful in terms of knowledge and the skill they're learning. And most importantly, these content needs to be able to contribute to the entire life. So based on that, I start to explore the framework for each grade, from K to 12. So this is a framework example for elementary school students because children grow so fast in that time, and we normally separate K to 12 students, K to 2 grade from 3 and 5th grade students. So in this case, and we have those 2 dimensions in place. And the theme here is to have children at this young age to understand every movement has a purpose. Here's the specific framework for a lesson. So the theme here is balance, and we have other themes. So I just published a book about this, so you can check it out for other themes. So in this balance theme, so we can see that we try to teach the students at this age from the activity, the movements you have, the students have at the birth until 5 years old. So that's the theme of this. So we want to say, here is the situation here, and you can move right after you came to this world, and you need to reflect on the purpose of these movements by mimicking them in our class. Can we do that? Yes, we can. And going home to talk to your parents to find evidence to show how you do those movements and what are those purposes. And we have endless activities or class assignments for them to do that. So for example, show and tell. Ask parents to provide evidence for students to bring to class to talk about their movement in infancy. From 3rd to 5th grade, at this stage, we want to accelerate the physical literacy journey, and we will pivot the purpose theme to the purpose of health. In my mind, it is never too early to instill the connection between physical activity and health. The enduring dimension will take the grand view of movement benefit my health. That's the major theme. The transient dimension will focus on the conception, focus on the connection between current health benefits and the potential lifelong benefits. Here's another example. You can see that content is organized around important concepts about cardiovascular health. Learning tasks are knowledge and movement integrated in that physical activity tasks that are performed to learn and reinforce the understanding of those concepts. These concepts are all around benefits of physical activity. Secondary schools can be difficult, and I group middle school grades and the 9th grade together, just for the purpose that 9th grade may be the last year currently we see our students, every one of them, in physical education. During this time, helping students sustain the physical activity momentum from elementary physical education is crucial. And I propose to focus on the theme of choice, which is a much needed decision-making process for them to learn. Research shows that they understand the long-term benefits of physical activity, but have difficulty connecting daily activities to the long-term goal of health for living. So this framework is to help them to make that connection. This is an extraction from our middle school curriculum. So you can see it's all concept. The focus here is cardiovascular fitness. So we have 3 units there. This is one of the unit here. So we sequence them between grades. So at each level of grade, the concept becomes a little bit more complex. Now, this is not a classroom learning experience. It is the concept they experience with physical activity in our curriculum. So this is the curriculum framework from our 9th grade curriculum we are doing at the moment. So it's focused on energy balanced living. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to teach. It is difficult. A lot of physical education teachers say, well, I have to review my undergrad physiology textbook. So that's very, very true. But this is something very important for us to focus on. 3 weeks ago, our group, me and our physiologist and a nutrition scientist from our nutrition department, 3 of us were invited to go to the biology conference in North Carolina, which is a conference for biology teachers. So they create a session, a 1-hour session called Preparing and Teaching the Whole Child for 3 of us to present our curriculum. And I asked the audience, how many of you have observed a physical education class? 1/3 of them raised their hands. So I asked them to share their experience. All of them, every one of them said they were trained as a physical education teacher, but they were reassigned to teach biology. That's the perception out there. So they figured physical education teachers understand science, but they don't want these science teachers to teach physical education. So that's the reality. So for high school 10th grade students, we want them to be able to autopiloting their physical activity journey, physical literacy journey. And when I look at the curriculum framework, and I think 3 components are very important here. Know it, address it, act on it. On what? The physical activity and the knowledge they need during aging times. So very rarely we have this content in physical education, in high school physical education. Even in college, we don't teach them the activities and the knowledge they may need when they reach 60, 70, and beyond. Are we going to teach them this? I think if we see them in high school that last time, and we might want to teach them those type of knowledge and activities so that at least they are aware that during their aging times, they will not be able to play team sports. They will not be able to run, most of them will not be able to run marathon. They have to settle down with those activities that they can do. Yoga, Tai Chi, jogging, walking, outdoor, hiking, those type of activities, and the knowledge behind those type of things. I think this should be part of the curriculum. In that way, we can really make a physical education program as a curriculum teaching physical activity needs from birth to graves. How can we do it? We need to have a sense of urgency. We have to make drastic curricular change. From the documents from in those 1991 Crossroads Conference, we know that incremental approach to curriculum change won't work. So we have to make up our mind to think another way to make it happen. Thank you all for your attention, and a special thank you to all the teachers and the students who helped and are helping me, our team, in our curriculum reform adventure. So really appreciate their help. And I also need to thank our team since 2003. Without these colleagues and doctoral students, we won't be able to do anything in this magnitude. Thank you very much. Oh,
Thank you.
I went over. Oh, sorry.
No, that was perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. And if you're ready, we do have a few questions that have come in for you. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a question from Thomas McKenzie. Said, great slide. What student behaviors would be indicative that a student is physically educated?
Very good question. The whole body locomotor movement. So when we look at their physical activity and we measure it using accelerometers, as we said. So I know Tom has been working on the relevance of those activities. So look at the direct connection between the physical activity, the nature of physical activity, and instructional components. The physical activity data we collected during the analysis, we are looking at the connection as well, because for every lesson, we do have data collectors on site to document the lesson process. So we call it as fidelity, lesson fidelity data collection. So if there's a curriculum slippage, for example, a teacher skip a task, and we will make a note. And in our analysis, and this slippage will be noted in that way. So we do measure their whole body movement and then transfer it into caloric balance, caloric measures, calorie measures.
Excellent, thank you. And there was one more follow-up from Dr. McKenzie. One of the challenges in the US is that few schools meet the laws and guidelines for the occurrence of PE in terms of frequency or duration in schools. Do you have any recommendations for improving this situation?
Wow. That's the real challenge. I have been said all along, and in our field, especially in curriculum field, we need policy researchers. We need scholars who understand policy practices. I was not trained as a policy researcher, so I can see the impact of policy here. Now, if I were trying that, I would present the data to the school board. So in my mind, this is something that we must do. So I'm in the process of actually doing that, but I'm still struggling, Tom. I don't know whether or not the approach that I'm using is the right approach. So I try to present the data, try to expand the program to include more schools, and I wrote report every year for the school administrators. So, when we do the Stockholm study, each year you report to NIH. So after that report, and I analyze the data school by school, so district by district. There are 4 districts in my study now. So each year, for each district office, I send them a report. And in each district, I will, in each school, and I write a report and send it to principal and the physical education teachers. So in that, I will emphasize the limitation of the policy here. We need more time. We need more resources, so on and so forth. So a couple of times, and I went to the district workshops, but of course, during this pandemic time and even before that, other things unrelated to physical education would take over the entire teacher workshop. Probably if you work in schools, you probably would notice that for physical education teachers workshop or professional development at the district level, a lot of times spent on discussing other things, policy issues instead of curriculum. So that's my little step to try, but I really think we need to focus on policy research at this time. Sorry,
Great.
Tom.
No, thank you. Am I allowed?
Yes, please.
Okay, no, I agree with you in that we need to do with the bigger bang theory, start from the top and change state laws and have some contemplation that they actually are met. And so that's why in the last many years, I've been working on a public health approach.
Right.
In that most districts will understand the importance of public health and not only concept learning, etc. So I do agree with you with the very proper notion of collecting data and providing it back to districts and to the teachers themselves. And so I commend you upon doing that. Many people don't, they just conduct their little research project and go along their merry way. And it's very challenging to work with schools and with districts, and it takes a lot of time. So thank you.
It is. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dr. McKenzie. I'm going to move on to the next question from Joanna Tremble. What barriers to implementation have you or do you anticipate with making this mindset shift for physical education content? Teacher buy-in. I think that's the foremost important thing that we need to address. The difficulty of doing a randomized trial is that you do not have a uniform sample of teachers who are all motivated, who are all on the same boat with the research team, and who are all forward thinking. And you have a random sample of them. So you have average teacher, and you have teacher who may be resistant to those ideas. And we spend a lot of time visiting them, support them. You know, a lot of times we just say, just give it a try. You give it a try, see how your students respond to it. And then most of them, I have to say, are professionals, and you know, they would try. So the next thing is we have to provide constant support to them. You know, my concern is that when we finish the project, because of the education policy in the U.S., we really don't have any administrative power in terms of curriculum decision making. So these teachers, when we finish the project, they are probably the ones who will fall out, drop out first. So we just need a policy to support them to continue, like Dr. McKenzie said, all along in that way. Great answer, thank you. Lori Larkin has asked, do schools in your state include PE concepts in their state testing?
They do. They have, but it's not in the physical education portion of that. So in our state, health and physical education are combined as one health for living curriculum. So their assessment will be integrated in that way. So there is a written portion of that. There's a physical activity portion of that. So there's a accountability system, I guess, started a few years back, and it seems to me they stopped recently to revise that. So we do have a knowledge portion of this. Yeah.
All right, so Trent Brown asked a question that I also had for you. So Professor Chen, where and how can you see this work be embedded in PEAT or through professional learning initiatives?
Say it again, how kinesiology is embedded in
how can you see this work be embedded in PEAT, physical education, teacher education, or through professional learning initiatives?
Oh, okay. I think that's very important in my mind, and I'm an advocate for overhaul teacher education program with a focus on number one, physical activity behavioral change. Number two, concept-based approach. Of course, I'm biased on that. So without those type of things, and it's going to be difficult for a fundamental change in the curriculum. Now, I'm so glad to report here 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago at the end of October, North Carolina had a SHAPE conference. So I went there, I present our curriculum, and I run a professional development session over there. And 2 of our former students came to me. One's teaching in middle school, the other one is in high school. They said, Dr. Chen, you remember me? I said, well, barely. They mentioned their name. I said, oh, okay, I remember you. You're a graduate from 2013. So about 8 or 9 years ago, they were in my methods class. It's called Teaching Children Fitness and Physical Activity. So that's a methods class I was teaching. And then I asked them to prepare lessons along this line, and I choose 6 lessons from our curriculum for them to teach in the practicum component of the class, and they teach them in middle school and high school in that case. So they remember that, and they still teach it. So I'm so pleased, and they ask me to say, hey, where can we get those curriculum? And I just tell them on our website, and you can come here, register, and you can download the curriculum in that way. So they were pretty happy. So I'm pleased about that. But what is unfortunate is that we have seen those very rapid reduction of enrollment in our teacher education programs. So we're almost at a point that we can't even sustain the program at this point. So I think we can't wait any longer. We have to change with our teacher education programs as well.
Great, thank you. Russell Dreisen, potentially Dreesen, I apologize, said in addition to the book, are there other published resources available for review? Could you determine where people might be able to find your work and learn more?
Yes, we have a website. It's, I don't have the link right now, but if you contact me, I can forward to you. But it's a website for the high school curriculum. So we are doing dissemination study. So like what I said, if someone here teaching high school or some high school want to teach the curriculum or give a try, contact me. So we will provide not only curriculum, but equipment and professional development and other resources. We have posters and we have a lot of things, task cards, hundreds of task cards, so people can set up their lessons for students, autonomous learning experience. So all those type of things we can provide for them to use. But if you're interested in elementary and middle school curriculum, contact me. My email address is a_Chen@uncg.edu, or if you search our university website and you can find me, no problem. So we do have those curriculum in digital form. So because the file is pretty large and we have to figure out a way to do that. But our plan is to upload them lesson by lesson into our website. So we're doing that in a break or shortly in the spring. So yes, we can provide those materials.
Wonderful, thank you. And Audra Walters with Shape America said that she could also follow up with a link to some of that information when she provides the link for this presentation as a follow-up.
Thank you, Audrey.
And she just provided the email in the chat as well, if you would like it. There's another follow-up question. Fengmin Wei said, Dr. Chen, thank you for your inspiring lecture. I am interested in the procedure that your team followed to develop a conceptual-based physical education curriculum. Can you talk more about this topic briefly?
Okay. Like what I said, this is a research project, but for the curriculum development part, number one, like what I said, you need to have a framework So our focus is on two things, cognitive knowledge learning and behavioral change. So these are the things that we focus on, and we use a lot of research findings to support the curriculum development process. And we look at the content we need in kinesiology, for example, in our curriculum, because we focus on fitness. So exercise physiology is the primary source of material that we will use, and the nutrition, and all the research findings about behavioral change. And these are the things we focus on. But when that part is settled, we invite scientists into our curriculum writing team. They were from physiology and they were from nutrition. So, but it depends on your curriculum, the concepts you focus on. Another important area of physical activity is skill development. So if you decide to develop a concept-based curriculum, in that regard, you can invite motor developmentalist, motor learning specialist in your team. And most importantly, we invited expert teachers. They are all national certified teachers to join our curriculum writing team. In the summer, we spend at least 6 weeks working together to start a framework, develop a curriculum matrix, and expand from matrix to a sequence. And then from that sequence, we start to write lesson plans. Each of us write, let's say, 3, 4, 5 lesson plans. And then we come together, correct each other's lesson plans, and make sure the concepts are right. And our scientists will validate all the scientific concepts. So they're the ones who start this writing process first. Give us a list of concepts, definitions. We will say, oh, this is too complicated, simplify it because we're dealing with 3rd grade children. And then they will do that and go from there, blend them into the lesson plans. And then in the process, I call it as mating. So for each concept, we mate physical activities with those concepts. For example, in concepts of some sort, we mate with scrambled egg for 3rd grade students. To do a scrambled egg activity, it's basically a tag game, and also for other concepts, and we incorporate something called Simba's escape. So just correlate or relate the concepts, and it's basically a physical activity obstacle course type of activity for elementary school students. So we made them together into the lessons, and then we check on the proof on it. And then when that is ready, we figure out the equipment, test cards, all those type of things, and we develop that as a separate resources. And then we develop alternative activities just in case something didn't work. And we have those all things put together as the curriculum before we start the experiment. So it's a long process.
Thank you. That was such a great and thorough answer to that. I believe that is all of the questions that we have specifically for you and related to the content that you've provided today. Thank you so much on behalf of our SIG and of everybody here. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Paul. Paul, did you have any final words you wanted to say before we signed off?
Nope, I just want to thank Dr. Chen again and Shape America, the whole staff, for helping to host and put this together, to organize it, and to you, Tori, for being such a great partner in crime, getting this organized and pulling it off and hosting today. Thanks to everyone for showing up. We think it was a great success, and especially because of Dr. Chen's brilliant insights and generosity of his time today. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank everybody.